Welcome to Duke University. Welcome to the Duke University School of Medicine, and welcome to Medical Neuroscience. Well, I hope you enjoyed that tour of campus, starting at some of our athletic facilities, which are part of our better-known brand at Duke University, the Duke Athletics program, and then working our way towards the Medical Center, which has its own global reputation for excellence in the domain of biomedical research and healthcare. Well, I hope to show you much of our campus during the course of medical neuroscience. We'll spend some time together in our teaching laboratories here at the Trent Seaman Center, where we'll have an opportunity to examine brain specimens together. We'll even spend some time behind the scenes here in the Trent Seaman Center in our specimen preparation room, where I will show you some of my favorite places in the human brain. And of course, we're going to spend some quality time in the Duke Institute for Brain Sciences through that glass cube behind me. And of course, in the Duke Institute for Brain Sciences, we always think inside the box. That's the glass cube. And we certainly will spend some time here in my office in the Duke Institute for Brain Sciences. We'll spend some time together here on the deck behind my house, as you'll get to see some of what I get to see on a daily basis as we learn together medical neuroscience. You'll even get to spend some time with me in my gazebo back behind my house. The reason why I'm bringing you into some of these unusual places, including some spaces around my own home, is that I want you to understand that learning about the brain is transformative. It can be part of your daily life, part of your daily rhythm, and something that you can consider as you face the various challenges and pursuits of your daily world, whatever that may be, wherever that may be. But for now, I simply want to say once again, welcome to Medical Neuroscience. I'm so glad that you found this course. I'm so glad that you are sufficiently interested in the fascinating world of the brain sciences to want to enroll in this course. What I'd like to do for the next few minutes is begin to tell you a bit about myself, and that will lead to some additional introductory video lessons that will help orient you so that you can get off to a great start here in medical neuroscience. So let's begin by talking a little bit about myself. I found over the years that it always seems to help my learners, and certainly helps me as an instructor, if I help explain to all of you a little bit of my own story as to how I got to be where I am today. Well, my story has a beginning, as all stories do, and in my case it was back in sometime in the last century. I won't tell you exactly when, but I was born and raised in the northeast corner of the United States in a small state, indeed the smallest state in the United States, called Rhode Island. It's a beautiful place. It's part of the region of the country that we call New England. And in my case, Rhode Island is really dominated by a beautiful rocky coastal landscape with the occasional sandy beach there as well too. But the ocean is near and dear to my heart, as are the cold and wet and damp winters of my youth in that part of the world. Well, it's a wonderful place to be born and raised, and I return there often to visit family and friends and some of my favorite places that I will share with you actually as the course progresses. I moved out of that part of the country, however, towards the middle of the United States to a city called Tulsa, Oklahoma, where I did my baccalaureate education at a university called Oral Roberts University. There I majored in biology, and I decided to stay on after graduating with a Bachelor of Science degree to pursue a Master of Biomedical Science degree emphasizing physiology. And it was at that point in my educational career that I was introduced to the human brain. In fact, the year was 1986, and I first met the woman that I would marry the same year that I held a human brain for the first time. So that was several decades ago now, and in both cases, that of my wife and that of the human brain, it was pure love at first sight. So after completing a master's degree in physiology, I was determined then to pursue a doctoral degree in the field of neuroscience. And at the time, one of the very best programs available was at Washington University, still in the Midwestern part of the United States, in the city of St. Louis, Missouri, where I pursued a PhD degree in neurobiology. Well, I received that degree in 1992, having the benefit of working very closely with Professor Joseph L. Price, one of the truly great neuroanatomists of our time. Dr. Price instilled in me a love for human neuroanatomy, a broad interest in all kinds of neural systems that are involved in the integrated action of the nervous system, and he was a powerful mentor for me personally as an educator. So I owe a lot of the career that I've enjoyed these last many years to my grounding with Dr. Price at Washington University. Well, from there, I finally came to Duke. And I came to Duke in 1992 as a postdoctoral fellow with my wife, who was pursuing additional medical fellowship at Duke University Medical Center. And I landed in the Department of Neurobiology as a postdoctoral fellow, working under the direction first of Professor Dale Purvis, and then under the direction of Professor David Fitzpatrick. After several years of fellowship work, I joined the faculty of the Duke University School of Medicine, and I've enjoyed quite a long and I think successful and certainly satisfying career as a research scientist and as an educator. More recently, I have joined an institute that we have at Duke called the Duke Institute for Brain Sciences, where I'm involved in leading the educational mission. So that's the broad overview of how I got here. Now I want to be a little bit more particular and tell you next about my life in research. So I've had a variety of interests, and I've pursued a number of different domains of neuroscience research. What they all have in common is a pursuit of understanding the organization and function of neural circuits in the brain. And this pursuit has taken many forms over the years. Much of my career has been focused on the mechanisms of response selectivity in the visual areas of the brain. Now, I am truly fascinated by vision, but I see this line of investigation as revealing some fundamental principles that will apply to other kinds of circuits elsewhere in the brain, including those that subserve functions other than vision. So my interests are primarily basic at the level of understanding how the structure of neural circuits accounts for their physiology, their function. Well, this interest in the visual parts of the brain began to extend back in developmental time and more recently evolutionary time. So I'm interested in understanding how these kinds of neural circuits and their structure-function relations develop. And you'll hear more about the research that I've been privileged to lead as we get deeper into medical neuroscience. In brief, one area of my activity has been to try to understand how what we call nature and nurture and self-organization interact to account for the evolved state of mature neural circuits that we have in our brain. Because of my work primarily back as a graduate student with Professor Price, I've acquired some expertise in human neuroanatomy, which has allowed me to interact with clinical colleagues doing a variety of research on patients at the Duke University Medical Center and volunteer subjects who are participating with us in ongoing investigations of the structure, organization, and function of the human brain. So it's been a real privilege to be involved in a variety of collaborative research projects with faculty here at Duke and colleagues around the world. As an educator, I've had wonderful opportunities to develop and to have an impact here locally at our Duke campus. As I mentioned, I am a member of the faculty of the Duke University School of Medicine, and in that role I've had the privilege of teaching students that are enrolled in our Doctor of Physical Therapy program. I've also been involved with educating our future physicians in our Doctor of Medicine program, and I've been involved with other kinds of learners in our School of Medicine at various levels as well over the years. I've also been quite involved in recent years in our Trinity College of Arts and Sciences, which is one of the main baccalaureate colleges of Duke University. There I've been involved with teaching courses in our undergraduate neuroscience program, and I've also helped to lead that program as an administrator. I also teach in the graduate school of Trinity College, and this has allowed me the opportunity to contribute to the development of future brain scientists in their doctoral phase of their education. And as a member of the Duke Institute for Brain Sciences, I've been charged with helping to organize and coordinate our educational efforts, primarily as they are directed towards our baccalaureate students in Trinity College. So it's been a wonderful privilege to work across this educational continuum and hopefully have an impact on learners not unlike yourself who come to our residential programs here at Duke University. Well, my story would not be complete if I didn't also introduce you to my family. So here in a recent picture taken at one of my favorite places, one of those rocky coastlines in the New England region of the United States, you can see my wife and my two children. My wife is a geriatrician, meaning she's an internal medicine physician who specializes in the care of older adults, particularly those older adults near the end of their life that are dealing with dementia and other kinds of medical and neurological impairments. I have two wonderful children named Jonathan and Hannah, who are a joy and a blessing in my life on a daily basis. Well, now that you know something about me, we'll next turn our attention to understanding the scope of medical neuroscience. So let's pick up our overview of medical neuroscience by talking about the scope of the course. Now, the scope of the course is intended to reflect what we in the field of neuroscience consider to be the core concepts that every educated person interested in the field of neuroscience should wrestle with. And these core concepts have been defined and articulated by our professional organization called the Society for Neuroscience. The Society for Neuroscience has created one of the very best sources of authoritative information about the brain and the field of neuroscience at a website called brainfacts.org. So I would encourage you to visit there to complement your studies with me in medical neuroscience. These core concepts are beautifully laid out and illustrated on that website, and you can find them and read a bit more about them there. But essentially, medical neuroscience will cover these 8 core concepts. First, and perhaps most obvious to those of you who have an interest in the brain is indeed the body's most complex organ. And we will study that complexity in various ways and hopefully affirm that complexity. It's interesting to me that in recent years the Society for Neuroscience has modified this core concept slightly. Perhaps we're being a little bit too parochial in our view of the brain, but we are now asserting that the brain is indeed the most complex structure in the known universe. And it's quite a challenge we have in front of us then to understand this organ and to wrestle with its complexity. Of course, we will never in our lifetime fully understand all of its mysteries, but I hope you'll be incredibly satisfied and even captivated by those principles and those organizational features that we will describe and that you will learn in your pursuit of medical neuroscience. Well, the next core concept maps into our second unit of knowledge in medical neuroscience, and that is that neurons communicate through both electrical and chemical signals. And we'll spend quite a bit of time talking about the generation of those electrical signals and how chemical messages mediate communication among neurons. We will describe the organization of neural circuits and talk about their genetic determination. And you'll see that genetically determined circuits are indeed the foundation of function in the nervous system. We'll talk about this wonderfully dynamic aspect of brain function that we call neuroplasticity. What we've learned over the course of my career in the field of neuroscience is that life experience can actually change the very structure and function of the nervous system. And you'll learn with me some of the principles by which that happens at the level of synaptic organization and circuit structure. As we move on to the later stages of the course, particularly in Unit 5 and 6, you'll learn that intelligence arises as the brain reasons, plans, and solves problems. So we will try to unpack for you some of those dimensions of cognition that are relevant for what we might call broadly intelligence, recognizing that even that word itself has multiple dimensions to it. The brain makes it possible to communicate knowledge through language. So as we explore the more complex brain functions in Unit 6, we'll spend some time talking about language processing and how the brain is organized to understand language and to make language in various forms. The seventh core concept is that the brain itself endows us with a natural curiosity to understand how the world works. Now, I can't state this core concept without reflecting on a student I had many, many years ago who came to me one day and said, "You know, I think we need to give up." And I said, "What do you mean we have to give up?" He said, "I just don't think that the brain should be allowed to study itself. The liver doesn't get to do that. No other organ in the human body gets to do that, so why should the brain?" Well, of course, he was being facetious. But there is a point there that the brain itself gives us the capacity to ask the kinds of questions that have brought us together in this global learning community that we call medical neuroscience. And we'll even touch on trying to develop an understanding of where does that curiosity come from. And then lastly, we'll talk quite a bit about primary discovery that have matured the field of neuroscience and expanded its boundaries. And thankfully, discoveries that have begun to have an impact in the real world and the lives of real individuals. So we'll talk about how fundamental discoveries in and around the world of neuroscience promote healthy living and new effective treatment for disease. And we're just getting started. I know some of you are here with me because you are afflicted with such diseases or your loved ones are addressing them. So I certainly want to be sensitive to those of you that come with very personal motivations for learning about medical neuroscience. And I hope that you'll engage with us through our discussion forums and share some of your stories with us as we pursue this particular core concept. Well, I've said quite a bit about these core concepts, and you'll see them repeatedly throughout our video lessons. I hope you won't get tired of them, because I truly do agree with those academic and thought leaders in the Society for Neuroscience that consider these to be the essential framework for all educated persons that are seeking to understand the structure and function of the human brain. Now, a bit more about the scope of the course. This content is organized into 6 units that will then unfold over a recommended 12-week course of study. We'll begin in Unit 1 in the first 2 weeks and survey the structure of the nervous system. So we call this aspect of our studies neuroanatomy. Unit 2 is concerned with neural signaling, and that includes the generation of electrical signals, the transmission of signals across synaptic junctions via chemical neurotransmitters, and the plasticity of those connections that come with patterns of use. So that's Unit 2, and that will occupy your studies in the 3rd and 4th weeks of the course. After Unit 2, we pivot to consider what we sometimes talk about as systems neuroscience, and this includes Unit 3, which is a survey of the sensory systems, and that will take you from weeks 5 to 7 in the course, and Unit 4, a series of studies focused on understanding movement and motor control. That will occupy your life in weeks 8 and 9 of medical neuroscience. Following the conclusion of those 2 systems neuroscience units, we shift gears a bit and consider how the brain came to be. So Unit 5 of the course is called The Changing Brain, which focuses on the development of the brain from embryogenesis all the way across the lifespan. And that leads us to the final unit of medical neuroscience, Unit 6, that will occupy your studies in the 11th and 12th weeks of the course. Here, we'll focus on the more complex aspects of brain function that pertain to the operation of much of this outer part of the cerebral hemispheres that we observe from the outside of the brain. And this is the cerebral cortex, and specifically the associational sectors of that cerebral cortex will be front and center as we consider the most complex aspects of brain function. Now, this is medical neuroscience, and my goal is to take you through those units of content with a particular focus, and that is to understand how this foundational knowledge in neuroscience relates to an understanding of the impact of neurological injury and disease. And one pedagogical method that we will use to address that framework is to use problem solving through the study of clinical cases. So here's how I'd like that to work for you. So the human brain, the human nervous system will be at the center of everything that we do. But as we pursue our studies, we will increasingly begin to introduce the neurological signs and symptoms that suggest a localized injury in the central nervous system. And we will use this iterative paradigm as a way of first learning the structure and function of the nervous system so that we can then predict what might go wrong given a set of neurological signs and symptoms that a real person would present with. And then as we move towards our final exam in the course, you'll see that we will increasingly lead with those neurological signs and symptoms and see if we can't deduce or localize a lesion in the central nervous system that would be consistent with what one would observe clinically through a neurological assessment of a real patient. So this process will unfold. We'll build upon this. We'll increasingly shift towards clinical case studies as the course progresses. And this is exactly the competency that professionals in the healthcare environment acquire as they understand the basic framework of the nervous system that allows them to be informed by what they observe in their patient interviews and in their physical assessments of their patients. Well, now that you know more about the scope of medical neuroscience, I'd like us to now turn our attention towards the resources that are available to you to support your learning. So let's consider our learning resources, and we'll start with our course website. I think the website should be rather intuitive for you, so I won't belabor its organization. I'll just simply note that on the left-hand column, you'll find the content of the course organized by weeks, and within each week there will be some text that will introduce you to the lesson of interest. There'll be some objectives for you to consider, and then you have the content. And that content comes in the form of video lectures from myself, and I would highlight that there are notes files that accompany nearly every video lecture. And that note file is for your own use, your own annotations. Many of them are available to you as both a PDF document and a Microsoft Word document. And given your preference, you can choose to acquire one or both kinds of formats and interact with that however you see fit. Of course, I would just ask that you consider this to be fair use for your own studies and learning. It is my intellectual property that I'm willing to share with you. So please don't repurpose this for any other reason. Just use it for your own studies and advancement. We also have a fabulous new resource that I'm so excited to introduce you to. It's a website called Learn Medical Neuroscience that was created by a very special individual who was with me in the very first edition of Medical Neuroscience and has supported thousands of learners from all over the world since then as a community teaching assistant and now a mentor. Her name is Ellen Voss, and I will now turn to Ellen and ask her to give you a tour of this wonderful website that you can access at any time to support your learning of medical neuroscience.
Hello, student medical neuroscience. Welcome to the course. I'm glad to meet you. My name is Ellen Voss, and as Voss is a very common name in the Netherlands where I come from, I've added Wisse on Coursera, so you might meet me as Ellen Voss Wisse on the discussion forum. I was a student myself in 2013 in the first run of the course, and I've been asked to be a teaching assistant and mentor ever since. As a teaching assistant, I try to help people on the discussion on the course by giving them study tips in the discussion forum and by creating links to useful content, explaining or going deeper into core concepts of the course on the course wiki in the virtual lab. But the virtual lab was not easy to access. You had to log into the course and then log into the course wiki again to get at that. So this year I decided to make a website supporting the learners of medical neuroscience, and that the website is called learnmedicalneuroscience.nl. I want to take you on a quick tour there. If we go to the homepage, we see our instructor, Professor White, visualizing knowledge, and that is very important, but it's important to do it yourself, not to look at other people's do that, because the learning experience is far less then. And there's also the structure of the website Learn Medical Neuroscience. There's the learning community, virtual lab, which is the core of the website, the learning materials and the neurological exam. If I take you to the top, there we have the main menu of the website, and I want to take you to the learning community. At the top you see the carousel of images with Get Neuro on Instagram. So if you have an image there and you give it Get Neuro, then it appears on this carousel. I'll explain it later. The learning community, you can actually benefit by active participation. Learning medical neuroscience takes effort. It doesn't come easily, and learn socially on the discussion forum is a great help. The discussion forum on the course homepage, you find it, follow the arrow to course content. There is a menu at the left of the screen, and you can see a button labeled discussion that takes you to the course forums. Make a habit to visit the forums regularly. Start a thread, and when others start to respond on it, go back to it and keep it alive for some time, and join in other discussions as well. going to their discussion forum is not at the expense of your study, but it really strengthens your study. There are the Get Neuro challenges. By course staff, you're invited to join in those challenges, and we'll go to the news page later and I'll show you some of the winners of the first session of 2016 of the first 2 Get Neuro challenges. There are also Google Hangouts. Then 10 students have the opportunity to ask questions directly to Professor White. They are usually very stimulating events, and the video embedded here is from a hangout later in the first session, last session of medical neuroscience. So all students were advanced in their studies then. So don't hesitate to ask explanatory questions as well. In the second hangout of the 2016 last session, Grace from Denmark has very good questions on nature, nurture and self-organization. And Professor White starts explaining. I had taken the course 4 times, seen the videos multiple times, but that session during that hangout gave me so much more insight. I really learned from that. There's also an active Facebook group with a lot of social interactions. It's a lot of fun, and I advise you to join. There are some pictures of neuroscience behind the scenes. Okay, let's go to the virtual lab. The virtual lab is really a scroll down menu, and I want to go to the virtual lab itself, so I click the virtual lab. And there you see the layout of those virtual lab pages and the neurological exam. They all have a featured video on the top. They don't have the news and the additional menu on the right side of the screen. Those featured videos are diffusely connected with the course. So I'll show you one in neural signaling. That is, they have information on not only the unit or the page they presented in, but usually with more places within the course. Here is the structure of the virtual lab. You have the general resources, the unit pages and additional neuroscience sites. I want to take you to the general resources. If I scroll down, I click Neuroscience 2nd edition, the first resource, and that takes you to the 2nd edition of the neuroscience textbook on the NCBI bookshelf. It is not easily searchable. You can't really go to it. Shows here the content, and if you want to look into this book, you have to enter the key term in search this book, and then you can get the information. I'll show you more about it later when we get to the summary of pathways. Close it again, and then I click the glossary. That takes you to the web page of the course textbook, and it gives you a very good glossary which can be very useful in your studies. And then I want to go to Genes to Cognition Online, and I click the 3D brain on the right side of the screen, and there you get the whole brain. And if you mouse over it, you see the different parts and you get the names. With the button on the left hand side you can rotate it and go from left to right. But I want to show you something else. I want to go to the drop down menu and I select thalamus. That really shows you the thalamus in its surroundings, in the way that it's situated in the forebrain. So it really tells you a lot more. If you go to the left side, you get more information. The overview of the thalamus, a case study, associated functions and associated cognitive disorders associated with damage. So this resource is important in more stages in the course. It's important in neuroanatomy, but also for the final exam. So you'll find this resource on more places of the website. It is intended to be like that. It's not an oversight of me, because people enter the website at very different pages, and I don't want people to miss it. I close this again, and we go to handwritten tutorials. This is the homepage of the handwritten tutorials. These are another resource that I like because they're schematic drawings of structures in which the information is built up. It is drawn first and then the names are given. So it takes you step by step through a whole lot of information. If we go to Brainstem Anatomy 1, mid-sagittal structure, you see the video on the left. And I want to show you the completed picture at this moment. So I click the drawing. And there you see the completed picture that is completed at the end of the video. And you can use that for your own study and to start drawing for yourself, of course. I close that and I close Brainstem Anatomy. And I scroll back to the top. I go to Virtual Lab, Unit 1, Neuroanatomy. Here I want to go to the second resource, The Human Brain by Anatomy Amsterdam. I click that and then I go to Cerebrum Slices in the menu on the left hand side. And I click the first of the coronal slices. In the little brain at the top left you see that it is a brain slice very much anterior in the brain. Here you can put on click on the labels and then you see that those labels are a bit more Latin. It is bulbus olfactorius, while Professor White and the textbook talks about olfactory bulb, so you have to get used to it if you want to use this website. I turn the labels off and then with the little arrow in the button below that, I go to second, third, fourth slice and I give you with the labels a lot of these structures you'll meet in the course, and by going from anterior to posterior in the brain, you really get some insight in three-dimensional structures of the brain. I think it's very useful, especially for the people that do not have Sylvius, but even if you do have Sylvius, it might be a nice addition. Okay, in the main menu at the left-hand side, I take you to the MRI. And here again you have frontal, axial and sagittal images, and you can put on the labels or not, and you go from one image to the next, from posterior to anterior or from the middle to the sides. I close this one. It's a very, very nice website, so do explore. Okay, and I want to take you to lateral surface of the cerebral hemispheres, and I click Gross Cortical Anatomy by Handwritten Tutorials. I want to show you a bit of the video and just let you enjoy it for a bit, and then we'll continue. We go to the YouTube site and I enlarge it because I like to look at it bigger.
Hi, in this video I'm going to talk about the gross cortical anatomy of the brain. So we're going to be looking at the brain from its lateral aspect. So I'll just draw it up here. There are two ways of looking at the brain. One is its gross anatomy, which is just the anatomy as we see it. And the other is looking at it functionally, so splitting up the brain into its functional parts. Here we're going to look at just the gross anatomy, and in the next video we'll look at the functional anatomy and how it relates. So here we have the central sulcus. And this is a very important sulcus in the brain.
Okay, well, you can watch the rest of the video for yourself, but you get an impression of what they look like, what this resource looks like. Looks like. I want to take you to Unit 2, Neural Signaling. And here I want to show you the featured video. You can look at it on the page, of course, but that's a bit small. You can go to YouTube and enlarge it. And here you see what I mean with diffusely connected with more units. This is neural signaling, but it also tells you more about what goes on in the brain. So it's relevant to brain anatomy. It's also relevant to Unit 3 on sensory systems, because there's a large collection of grey matter nuclei in the forebrain, the thalamus, that are important for sensory systems. It's also important for motor systems, because there are other collections of grey matter nuclei in the forebrain, the basal ganglia, that are important and that you'll meet in the motor systems. And this video really sets your frame of mind for understanding what goes on in and around those nuclei. Now we're entering the brain. Look at this corpus callosum over there. Wonderful. Well, we close it and we go back again to learn medical neuroscience. Here I want to show you a resource in ionic basis of the resting membrane potential, the last one, action potential. Then you go to the site of the neuroscience textbook, and those animations are wonderful because they really build up the information that goes step by step. You can go through the animation narrated or step through. I'm going to take you through step through. And I want to go to slide 7. That shows you the action potential. And slide 8 shows you the action potential and the membrane channels that are important in different phases of the action potential. If you click further, you can see them opening and closing in different phases of the action potential. So those are really valuable resources. You meet animations from this textbook, but also from other textbooks from the same publisher. I'll close this one and we go back to Unit 3. Sensory systems. I want to draw your attention to a resource that was created for us by community teaching assistant B.C. Jackson, who did it in 2014. He made brain section cards and brain section images for tracing tracts. I want to go to the tracing tract images, click that, and you can use them to make your own drawings and, well, really enlarge your insight. I want to click the third one because that one is coming back in the summary of pathways we're going to later. I close that. I go to the top again and I want to go to additional neuroscience sites. This is really additional information. There's some TED playlists, how a game to contribute to neuroscience when you have to map a neuron. And there's NeuroTV. These are wonderful interviews on neuroscience, like for instance episode 5 on grid cells and navigation with May-Britt Moser and Edward Moser, who won the Nobel Prize for their research. And that interview really gives you an insight in what neuroscience research is about. So if you're interested in that, it might be very nice to watch that. And there are some relevant brain blogs there. Okay, I want to leave the virtual lab and we want to go to learning materials. There you have the brain section images again, and here you have another, in general learning materials, medical neuroscience, you have another list of resources, but they're not linking to websites with content or explaining content, but more a possibility to review your knowledge. So you can practice and practice and practice again. For instance, the last one is the practice problems from the textbook. Professor White creates the possibility for you to create an account there and use this. There are neuroscience book recommendations, and this is the summary of pathways. If I click that, this is a summary I made for myself in 2013, and I started to share with students in 2014 and later years. And if we scroll down, we see a lot of images. These are copyright free, so I can share them with you. And if we go to page 3 we see the dorsal column medial lemniscal pathway. You recognize the image because that's from the tracing tracts images that B.C. Jackson created for us. And if I go to the top, you can see where it is in the 5th edition of the book, and the 6th edition will be added later, of course. And if I click the blue link in the below that, it takes me to the textbook on the neuroscience bookshelf. If I type figure search this book, it gives me one resource where I can look, and if I click that, you can see image figure 9.6, which is a better representation of the main mechanosensory pathways than my drawing was. So you can use it for your own studies. You can't share it with others. It's protected by copyright, so you can only use it for yourself. You can direct others to it like I did, but you can't directly share the images. If I scroll down a little bit more, we go to page 7, and there you see the visual pathways from Anatomy Amsterdam. Well, there are a lot of more things in it, and students find it really useful, so you can download it from my drive. There's also a summary on Unit 3-4 and summary on Unit 1-2. We go back to the top, we click the neurological exam, which gives you information on neurological exam, as you might have guessed. But also the neurological cases is a wonderful site from the University of Utah that really gives you a sort of method of learning the neurological exam and doing the neurological exam as well. There are also the clinical neurology videos. They were one of our member of our learning community in January 2016 was a resident at the neurology department in the hospital in Madrid, and he presented it to us in the discussion forum. It's wonderful. It's a site with 700 videos on neurological cases, so wonderful study material. There's a nice paragraph on dealing with neurological constraint. It's really inspiring to see people handle those constraints. If we go to Parkinson dances, that's really very nice. You see the pleasure people with Parkinson's disease can get from dance, and it was really an eye-opener for me to see how things like that were possible. The featured video from Unit 4, Motor Systems, is also on Parkinson dances. There's also information on Harshada Rayani. She's a member of our learning community. She joined the course in January 2016, and she's a stroke survivor that suffers from locked-in syndrome. She shares her insights in her writing for the Huffington Post. If I go to the top again, I click Contact. And contact for students of medical neuroscience, you can contact me through the Learn Medical Neuroscience subforum on the course website. You can ask me questions, point out things to me, or you could write a news article on general neuroscience news that I could copy and paste with your name, of course, in the news rubric of this website if you want to. There's a contact form for people that don't belong to the course. And then we go to the news page. On the pages without featured video, the news is also on the right side of the screen, as is the second menu. We go to the news page, and here you get the Hangout Teaching Award for Professor White. That's something that did us a lot of pleasure that he got this award. And there is at the bottom the winners from the second Get Neuro contest. You had to make an image of something in your daily life or in nature that resembles a neurological structure. And we have the tree roots, the mandarin and the cauliflower. The next one is important, to practice a clinical neurological exam on a virtual patient. Duke is working on an application with a virtual patient called Carl, and you can learn, you can practice it for yourself, but also Duke can learn from your experiences. So fill in the entrance survey and the exit survey when you're finished with doing the 3 runs of examination. Duke can really learn from your experiences, and it's a way to give something in return to the university. If I go to the next page, we get the winners of the first Get Neuro Challenge. Then you had to give an image of yourself studying medical neuroscience. And here we see Maddie Corper studying neuroscience while waiting in her freight train to be loaded. Isa Jaske from Down Under. And Rabia Anyum from Lahore, burning the midnight oil at 3 a.m. with watching Professor White studying neuroscience. So that's really very, very nice. At the right hand side of this page you also see the second menu of this website. That's about study strategy and all the study tips. I want to click study strategy. And there is sort of a roadmap for your study of medical neuroscience. You can see that visualize your knowledge is very important, and you can find it there. I want to take you to the general study tips. And the first study tip is practice, practice, practice. Quizzes and exams are not only there to acquire grades. They're great practice material, so do them multiple times. That's very useful. If we scroll down, we see a wonderful, useful tip by Nicole Foster on taking notes. There's more information though, there, go and have a look. The study tips neuroanatomy. The unit study tips do have a figure that I think is useful for learning that unit, and there's a kind of bonus. They're copyright free, so I can share them with you. They're also, most of them are also in the summary of pathways. Well, there are also study tips for the final exam, and that gives you some more, it tells you to go back to certain parts in the course that are relevant and all that. So this concludes my short tour of the website Learn Medical Neuroscience. I hope you enjoyed the tour, I hope you will enjoy the course, and I look forward to meeting you on the discussion forum. Goodbye.
Thank you, Ellen, for everything you've done to support medical neuroscience over the years, and thank you for creating this fabulous new repository of information and resources of all sorts that I know our students will greatly benefit from as they pursue their studies of medical neuroscience. In addition to the content that I prepared for you on our course website, there will also be recommended readings from a textbook. That textbook is Neuroscience, available now in a 5th edition from the publisher Sinauer Associates Incorporated. Now, I need to let you know that my name is on the cover of this book, so I have a bit of a conflict of interest in pushing this book too strongly on you, but I do want to commend it to you. Obviously, I'm involved with the project. I helped to create a fair bit of content for this text. So it's a project that I believe in, and I believe generally in the value of textbooks. I have here the French edition of this book, and I'll just let you know that this book is available from various distributors in multiple languages. So if your best language is not English, you may look in to see what translation of this book might be available to you where you are. So I consider this to be a wonderful option for those of you who prefer to have a book in your hands, not just a screen in front of you. But I would also say that it is entirely possible that you will be completely satisfied and fulfilled in your studies of medical neuroscience, even without acquiring a copy of the book and pursuing the readings. But I want to give you as many options as possible to be successful, including knowing that there is an attempt to organize this course around the structure of this book so that you can count on the book to provide a valuable resource for you that will explain those concepts with greater clarity than perhaps I have in my video lessons with you. There's another book that I would strongly commend to you. It's Neuroanatomy Through Clinical Cases by Dr. Hal Blumenfeld. This book is also published by Sinauer Associates. Now, I'm not assigning readings from this book because in many ways this book is actually a bit beyond the scope of medical neuroscience, but it's a fabulous resource for any of you that may be pursuing the neurological specialties. The approach that this book takes is to lay out some foundational neuroanatomy and then to challenge your understanding through a series of clinical case studies. It's very much the method that we use here in this course, Medical Neuroscience. It's just that the content of this book goes beyond an introductory level, which would be consistent with what most medical students would learn in their first year of medical education. That's what we strive to achieve in medical neuroscience. This book would serve those students well, but also more advanced learners that are progressing deeper into their medical studies. Another resource that we will use in medical neuroscience is an online atlas of the central nervous system. Again, a disclaimer, my name is on this product. This is called Sylvius 4 Online, an interactive atlas and visual glossary of human neuroanatomy, also published by Sinauer Associates. My partner in this project, Mark Williams, and I have created this atlas, and it is web-served. If you choose to purchase our textbook of neuroscience, then a subscription to this atlas comes with that textbook. Otherwise, you could choose to acquire this atlas as a standalone subscription directly from the publisher's website. So you can find that online and acquire that if you choose to. Again, it's not essential for success in medical neuroscience, but I would recommend this atlas if any of you may be interested in acquiring an atlas. There's lots of free interactive atlases available on the internet. Sylvius has the advantage of being the most detailed atlas concerning the internal anatomy of the brainstem. Really the only atlas of its kind that delivers content in that area, which will become important in Units 3 and 4 of this course. And now I want to turn to your part in medical neuroscience. I need to tell you, this course is the largest course in the Coursera catalog, and very likely one of the largest, if not the largest, massive open online course available anywhere on the internet. To be successful in this course, you should plan to commit about 16 to 20 hours a week. Now, that's not to say you can't be successful with a lower level of commitment. You can, and many people have over the last several years. But this is my good faith estimate for what you should expect in order to maximize the benefit of this course. Now, this is a on-demand course, so you in principle could proceed at your own pace, and that might be different from my recommendation, and I understand that. I want you to be aware of that, as a matter of fact. But I do want you to know what my expectation is of a typical learner to be successful in this content. As you progress through this content, you can expect there to be weekly quizzes. These quizzes come at the end of our lessons, and I think you'll find that they are a very helpful way for you to keep pace with the content of the course. The way I've created these quizzes is that there are multiple variations of questions within each quiz. So you can actually take the same quiz multiple times, and as you do, you may see different questions, different variations of the same question. So there's actually great pedagogical value in repeating the experience of taking a quiz or an exam, and I hope that you would do so as a way to reinforce your learning. We will have a series of discussion forums at multiple points of contact in the course, and I strongly encourage your participation. One of the most wonderful aspects of medical neuroscience has been the community that has come around this course from all corners of the world. And it's been tremendously gratifying for me as a professor and as an educator to participate in this global learning community. The best way to do so is to be active in our discussion forums. And again, be looking for the various prompts that you will encounter as you work through these lessons that will drive your activity on the discussion forum. And I think you'll really enjoy getting to know our mentors and getting to know one another as we meet and greet one another and learn together. Towards that end, there'll be a variety of mechanisms for social engagement. We'll have real-time hangouts from time to time, and I'll let you know when those happen. This will be an opportunity for us to get online together in front of a video camera and have a chat face-to-face. You'll have opportunity to ask me questions in these hangouts, and we'll have a discussion. So you'll be getting information as the course progresses so that you'll know how to get involved with those periodic hangouts. We also have a Twitter account that I hope many of you will choose to follow. Our Twitter handle is MedNeuroMOOC, and that might be a fun way for you to participate in the abbreviated format of social media. We also have a Facebook group which was completely developed by students that were part of the very first edition of Medical Neuroscience. I don't have much of a presence at all on that Facebook group. It has been student run and student managed, and I'm delighted that that group has existed over these years, and I would encourage you to check it out. Consider whether you want to be part of that group. And then lastly, you can expect there to be a serious comprehensive final exam. So as I mentioned, the course is organized into 12 weeks. We do have a 13th week, and that 13th week is devoted to this final exam. So I hope that you'll plan accordingly so that you can apply yourself and really see this as a capstone event in your completion of this course. The comprehensive final exam will be based around a set of clinical cases, and it will challenge you to integrate your learning across the 6 units of this course. And I think you'll find it to be a very satisfying experience, and you'll be amazed at how much you know by the time you come to that comprehensive final exam. Before I leave you in this orientation to our course, Medical Neuroscience, I want to just speak to you for a few minutes and reflect upon what I think are some evidence-based, neuroscience-founded principles about learning. Now, for those of you who are interested, and I'm sure many of you have already done so, I would strongly commend a wonderful Coursera course called Learning How to Learn by Professor Barbara Oakley, Professor Terence Sejnowski. That course will surely open your mind to your own learning preference and allow you, I think, to maximize your investment in a course like Medical Neuroscience. So I won't necessarily go through their principles of how to learn. Rather, I'll just reflect a bit on my own experience as a learner and as an educator. So what I would suggest you do for productive learning in this course is to follow the path that I've laid out for you. I've tried to construct a logical, coherent sequence of learning activities, and while you are certainly free to deviate from that path, I would recommend that you follow the order and the sequence of the course as I've laid it out. And that includes the discussion prompts that you will encounter as you work through our lessons. I think those prompts can really serve to reinforce your knowledge and to extend your learning. Now, I don't mean to canalize your learning when I encourage you to follow the path. Surely there will be times when you will want to stray off the path and explore
and I would encourage you to do that. Visiting the website Learn Medical Neuroscience is a wonderful way for you to get off the path that I've laid out for you here on this website and pursue those topics that are of particular interest to yourself. I would only encourage you then to return to the path and bring your new knowledge and your new enthusiasm for your learning back to the broader community. Secondly, I will encourage you to visualize your knowledge. We'll do this in multiple ways as the course progresses. I'm a firm believer in making visual your mental model, and to do so as large as possible. The picture I'm showing you here is actually a sketch that some of my campus-based students made in our very first lesson on the structure and organization of the human brain. So this was a collaborative drawing made by a team of students on a large writing surface, and I would encourage you to do the same. Now, you don't need a whiteboard and a set of markers to visualize your knowledge. You may choose to go to the local market and pick up some produce or some craft supplies and make your own representations of the structure of the brain and its neural pathways. The point is that you are making visual and even tangible your knowledge, and you're making it subject to secondary interrogation by yourself and potentially by others. I think that's a wonderful way to reinforce your learning and to hold yourself accountable for the precision of your knowledge. So I hope you'll take advantage of those opportunities that I'll give you to visualize your knowledge. Thirdly, I will encourage you to learn spatially. So this is a picture of my son, who is deeply embedded in a fabulous art installation that was present in Washington, D.C. at the Hirshhorn National Gallery a few years ago. And the artist invites viewers to enter this space that is defined by all of these blue wires that are hanging down from the ceiling, and then to move through that space. And I love this metaphor of making spatial your knowledge, essentially creating a cognitive map. And we'll talk some about that when we get into Unit 6 of the course. But the principle is to create a cognitive space that allows you to move through it. Now, you can do this virtually, you can do this in your imagination, you can even do this in the real world. And I will encourage some of you to see this as a challenge and to make spatial your knowledge so that you can move and interact with it. I'll give you an example. We will study the pathways by which the signal from our fingertip reaches the postcentral gyrus in the opposite hemisphere of the cerebral cortex. Well, there's a pathway. There are neurons that are connected in sequence, and there's a crossing of the body's midline that allows my left index finger to send signals to the right hemisphere of my brain. I once challenged students to act out this pathway, to use a large space in a classroom to fill that space with themselves, their teammates, their classmates, and to create a theatrical representation of the flow of information from the fingertip to the postcentral gyrus. That was a wonderful way to fill that space with their knowledge and to interact with mobility and in the real world to represent something that's much more abstract, the organization of a functional pathway in the central nervous system. So visualize your knowledge, but learn spatially. And lastly, I will encourage you to learn socially. That same group of students that acted out the touch pathway from fingertip to cortex had the wonderful benefit of learning in community and doing so socially. Now, there may be some of you out there that like to learn, as we say, the old-fashioned way, with sensory deprivation, immobilization, and social isolation. Well, that may be your learning preference, and I won't criticize you for adopting that preference, but I would say that that's not how the brain evolved to process information and to learn. We are social creatures, And at some point in your studies of medical neuroscience, I would encourage you to enter that social space. This is why I think our discussion forums are such an important part of the medical neuroscience experience, and why I hope we will extend our learning into social media spaces as well. Well, those are just 4 tips from me about how to learn. I think there's something particularly useful about employing those strategies when we come to understand the organization and the function of this most complex of organs in the human body. It just invites one to learn visually, spatially, in community, learn socially. And to do so, I would encourage you to follow the path that I've laid out for you. And if you do so, I think you have every opportunity to be successful in medical neuroscience and to fulfill your own ambitions, whether that's to successfully complete this course and earn a verified certificate, or just to improve your knowledge and understanding for those domains of this field that are of greatest interest to you. So I look forward to the journey ahead. I look forward to working with all of you as we collaborate in this global community of learners, and I can't wait to get started. I hope you feel the same way, so I invite you to progress on in our studies in week 1 of medical neuroscience.
Welcome to one of my favorite places associated with Duke University. This is one of several entrances to something called the Duke Forest, which is about 7,000 acres of land that's managed by Duke University right adjacent to the campus of Duke University. So this is land that is set up for research, for education, and just for management of this beautiful, amazing pine and hardwood forest that we have here in central North Carolina. I just love this place. So much so that I come here every Saturday morning and just run the trails and the fire roads like what we have here. And I've encouraged my students over the years to do the same. Not that I'm a fitness nut or anything like that, but I do enjoy running for fitness, and certainly would encourage all of you to be physically fit and as active as you can be, just for the amazing benefits that physical fitness can have in your life. So what does this have to do with medical neuroscience? Well, when I teach my students here on campus, I always invite them to join me on these Saturday morning runs, and a few of them actually do. So I decided to help make this sound a little bit more fun and appealing, that I would call this Saturday morning run a NEURRUN. Little play on words there, neuron being the principal unitary element in the nervous system that does the business of the nervous system. Not to downplay the important role of glial cells, but you get the idea. Neuron is an important component of the nervous system. So just replace those final 3 letters with the word run, and you get NEURRUN. So here's the deal. I tell my students, come meet me at 8 o'clock Saturday morning, right here, and we'll have about a 5-mile run through the forest. We've got to run slow enough so that we can stay together, we can have conversation. Basically, we can run in community with one another. Secondly, we want to be able to have some discussion about the things that we're working on during the course. So I never have any problem with what is my second rule, that is talking about something that's happening in the course. But I usually have some trouble with the first. That is keeping up with some of my students who are a lot younger than me and a lot faster and in better condition. But they humor me, they run with the old guy. So we typically have just a great time together on Saturday morning. It's a good chance to get to know students outside of the classroom. And I wanted to give you a little bit of that sense of experience as well. So here we are, Saturday morning, the Duke Forest. I'm a little early, so no other students have arrived yet. But I think I better get the blood pumping a little bit. So I'm going to go do a little bit of warm-up now. Well, If you're ever in Durham, North Carolina, look me up and consider joining me for one of these Saturday morning neuroruns. Gotta run.